Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something a little different. We're not just visiting a time and place, we're going to step inside the mind of one of history's greatest self-improvers. We're heading to 18th century Philadelphia to become a young, ambitious, and slightly obsessive Benjamin Franklin as he embarks on a lifelong project to achieve, well, moral perfection. No big deal. Right, honestly, with the schedule he sets for himself, you'd probably be begging to go back to your 21st century reality by lunchtime on the first day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'm always curious to know where you're all listening from. Drop your city and the time in the comments below. It's always cool to see our little community scattered across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is 1728. You are 22 years old. And the city of Philadelphia is your entire world. You can feel its rhythm in your bones. The clatter of horseshoes on uneven cobblestones. The distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. And the constant, faint smell of coal smoke, damp wood, and the salty tang of the Delaware River. Your own little corner of this world smells of something else. Fresh ink, lid type, and the crisp, satisfying scent of paper. This is your print shop. It's not much. Just a rented space with a hefty wooden printing press that groans and creaks like an old man getting out of bed. But it's yours. You lean against a stack of paper, the evening air drifting through the open doorway, bringing a welcome coolness after a long day of hard, physical labor, setting type by hand, letter by tiny metal letter, is painstaking work. Your fingers are perpetually stained with ink, a mark of your trade you wear with a certain pride. You've come a long way from the runaway apprentice who arrived in this city a few years ago with only a few coins in his pocket and a puffy, oversized coat. No, you're a business owner. You print pamphlets, advertisements, and you've even started your own newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette. Life is good. But for you, good is never good enough. Your gaze drifts to the street outside. A group of men stumbles out of the nearby tavern, their laughter loud and slurred. You watch them, not with judgment, but with a kind of detached curiosity. You see their potential squandered on cheap ale and pointless arguments. You see it everywhere, in the merchant who fudges his ledgers, and the politician who makes promises he never intends to keep. In the artisan who does just enough work to get by and no more. You see their faults, their inefficiencies, their self-sabotage, and if you're being truly honest with yourself, you see traces of them in your own reflection. You remember the arguments you got into back in Boston, your youthful arrogance and love for contentious debate often making more enemies than friends. You think about moments of laziness, of indulgence, of speaking when you should have listened. These aren't catastrophic moral failures, but to your orderly mind, they are bugs in the system. They are errors in your printing work. An error, a typo, a misaligned page is called an erratum. You fix it, you reprint, you learn. So why, you wonder, can't a life be corrected in the same way? Why can't a character be perfected like a manuscript before it goes to press? This is where the idea begins to spark. A tiny, audacious flame in the quiet of your workshop. What if a man could systematically eliminate all his faults? What if you could design a program for self-improvement as logical and methodical as an algebraic equation? The goal wouldn't just be to become a good person in a religious sense. For you, it's a matter of practicality. A person free from vice would be a master of his own life. He would be more productive, more respected, more persuasive, and ultimately, more successful. Moral perfection, you realize, is the ultimate productivity hack. Historians still debate the true motive behind this grand project you're about to undertake. Was it a genuine spiritual quest driven by a Puritan-like desire for virtue? Or was it the most ambitious self-branding and networking strategy ever conceived by a young man on the make? Perhaps the truth, as it often does, lies somewhere in between. You know that to get ahead in this world, people need to trust you. You've already started cultivating a public persona, the plain-speaking, hard-working leather apron on a character you use in your writings to connect with the common folk. This project would be the ultimate embodiment of that persona. It would be your masterpiece. The last of the evening light fades, and the street outside grows quiet. The tavern patrons have staggered home. The city is settling down for the night. But in your mind, a new day is dawning. You light a candle, the flame dancing and casting long, flickering shadows across the room. You pull out a fresh sheet of paper and a quill. The grand, almost laughable, ambition of it all doesn't deter you. It excites you. You dip the quill into the inkpot. The project needs a name, a structure, a list. You will call it your bold and arduous project of arriving at moral perfection. And it starts now, with a single, deliberate stroke of the pen. An idea is just a ghost until you give it a body. And for this ambitious project, its body will be a small book, not a grand, leather brown tome, but something pocket-sized, practical, and unassuming, much like the persona you're trying to build. You take a few sheets of paper from your stock, fold them carefully, and stitch them together down the middle with a sturdy linen thread. You fashion a simple cover from cardstock. It's a humble creation, but it's about to become the most important book you own. You call it, quite simply, your little book. Inside, you begin to design the system. This isn't just a diary for navel gazing. It's a tool for measurement. You draw a chart, a grid that would make a 21st century spreadsheet enthusiast weep with joy. Along the left margin, you carefully write down your list of virtues. This is the heart of the whole enterprise. You don't just jot down random good habits. You curate them. You architect them. What are the fundamental pillars of a perfect character? You start with what you believe is the foundation for all others. Temperance. Eat not to dullness. Drink not to elevation. Basically, don't get sluggish from too much food or silly from too much booze. A clear head is required for the work ahead. Silence. Speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. In short, stop arguing for the sake of it and avoid pointless gossip. Order. Let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. This is the dream of a perfectly organized life, from your desk to your daily schedule. Resolution. Resolve to perform what you ought. Perform without fail what you resolve. Stop procrastinating. If you say you'll do it, do it. Frugality. Make no expense but to do good to others or yourself. Waste nothing. Every penny saved is a penny earned for a greater purpose. Industry. Lose no time. Be always employed in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. This is the gospel of deep work. 18th century style. Sincerity. Use no hurtful deceit. Think innocently, unjustly. And, if you speak accordingly. Be genuine. Justice. Wrong none by doing injuries, or omitting the benefits that are your duty. Don't be a jerk. And actively, do the good you're supposed to do. Moderation. Avoid extremes. Forbear resenting injuries, so much as you think they deserve. Don't fly off the handle. Keep a level head. Cleanliness. Tolerate no uncleanliness in body, clothes, or habitation. A simple but, in your era, surprisingly challenging goal. Tranquility. Be not disturbed at trifles, or at accidents common or unavoidable. The 18th century version of don't sweat the small stuff. Chastity. You frame this one carefully, thinking about health and reputation, not just strict religious morals. Humility. Imitate Jesus and Socrates. This last one, humility, is a late addition. Some historians love this story. Initially, you only had 12. You were quite proud of your list, quite proud of your logical system, and, well, quite proud of yourself in general. A good friend, likely a Quaker known for his plain-speaking honesty, took you aside one day. He pointed out, in the kindest way possible, that you were often perceived as arrogant, that your passion for being right in every argument made you insufferable at times. Ouch, the feedback stung, but your practical mind saw the truth in it. Pride was a major flaw, an inefficiency. So, you added a 13th virtue to your list, realizing that without it, The whole project was doomed. The irony, of course, is delicious. You are now methodically planning to be humble. You're rescheduling it. Now, with the list complete, you turn the page and create the first weekly chart. Across the top, you write the days of the week. Down the side, the 13 virtues. The page is now a grid of 91 empty boxes. Your method is simple and beautiful. Each week, you will focus all your energy on mastering just one virtue. This week, the focus is temperance. At the end of each day, you will review your actions. For every time you failed, ate that extra slice of pie, had one too many glasses of cider at a business dinner, you will mark the corresponding box with a small black dot of ink. The goal, to live a day, and then a week, with a clean page. Historians still debate the sources of your list. It wasn't pulled from thin air. You were a voracious reader, and your virtues echo the ethics of Aristotle, the self-discipline of the Puritans, and even the esoteric practices of groups like the Pythagoreans, who also practiced daily self-examination. You were, in essence, creating a greatest hits album of Western ethical thought and repackaging it as a practical, secular program. It was less about pleasing God and more about optimizing the human machine. You hold the finished book in your hand. It feels solid, real. The flickering candlelight dances on the fresh ink. It's a spreadsheet of the soul, a moral ledger. Each black dot will be an erratum, a mistake to be acknowledged and corrected. The beauty of the system is its cyclical nature. After 13 weeks, you'll have completed one full course, having focused on each virtue. Then, you simply start again. 4 courses a year, a lifelong project. You look at the clean grid for your first week on temperance. It's a blank slate, full of potential. The quiet confidence you feel isn't pride. It's the calm assurance of a craftsman looking at a well-designed blueprint. The plan is perfect. Now, all you have to do is live it. The first thing you hear is not a gentle alarm, but the sharp, insistent clang of a distant church bell. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Outside your window, Philadelphia is still shrouded in a deep, pre-dawn gloom. The air cool and damp. Most of the city is fast asleep. But for you, the day has already begun. This is the first test of your resolve. The first battle of the day, swinging your legs out of a warm bed and planting your feet on the cold wooden floor. There's a part of you that begs to stay under the covers, to drift back to sleep for just another hour. But then you remember the little book on your bedside table. You remember the schedule. 5 to 7 is designated for rise, wash, and address powerful goodness. You stumble out of bed, your body still stiff with sleep, and head to the wash basin. The water is cold, shockingly so. There's no hot water on tap in 1728. You splash it on your face, the cold shock jolting you into a state of sharp awareness. It's a physical baptism into the day's work. Then comes the address to powerful goodness. You're not a conventionally religious man, not in the way your Puritan parents in Boston were. Your concept of God is more like a divine watchmaker, a grand architect of a rational universe. So your morning prayer is less about supplication and more about alignment. It's a moment of mental calibration. You stand by the window, watching the first faint streaks of gray light appear on the eastern horizon, and you ask yourself a simple, powerful question. What good shall I do this day? This isn't a rhetorical question. It's a strategic one. You mentally run through the day ahead. There's the printing of the next issue of the Gazette. You resolve to ensure every line is perfect, every advertisement clear and fair. You have a meeting with your John to Club members tonight. You resolve to bring a genuinely useful topic for discussion, something that will benefit everyone. You remember a debt someone owes you. You consider how to ask for it back in a way that is just but not aggressive. The question forces you to be proactive, not reactive. It frames your entire day as a series of opportunities for positive action, not just a list of chores to be completed. After this moment of quiet contemplation, you move on to the next part of your morning block. Prosecute the present study. This is your sacred time for self-education, while your competitors are still snoring. You are reading. Use it at your desk, the candlelight pushing back the darkness, and you devour books. Not novels or light entertainment, but works of science, philosophy, history, and practical arts. You might be studying a new language, like French or Italian, copying out vocabulary and grammar rules. You might be reading about agricultural techniques or the latest scientific discoveries from Europe. Your mind, you believe, is a muscle. This is its morning workout. Some scholars argue that this to our block of focused, early morning learning was the single most important factor in your success. It was your competitive edge. While other printers were merely tradesmen, you were slowly and systematically turning yourself into a polymath, an intellectual powerhouse. This dedicated study time would later allow you to invent the lightning rod, map the Gulf Stream, and hold your own with the greatest thinkers of the Enlightenment in the salons of Paris. It all started here, in the cold, quiet darkness of a Philadelphia morning, as the sun finally rises, casting a warm glow over the city. Your first work block is complete. At 7 o'clock, you hear the city truly waking up, the rumble of cars, the calls of street vendors, the general hum of commerce. You look at your schedule. Theta, 2 to 12 p. Is marked simply as work. It's time to head to the print shop. But you don't go reluctantly. You've already accomplished more before breakfast than many people will in their entire day. You've aligned your purpose, sharpened your mind, and prepared yourself for the tasks ahead. You grab your little black book and glance at this week's virtue. Let's say it's order. You look at your desk. Is everything in its place? Not quite. You spend 5 minutes steadying up, putting books back on the shelf, arranging your papers. It's a small act, but it's a conscious one. You're repriming the pump for a day of orderly conduct. The morning ritual is complete. You haven't just woken up. You've been activated. You walk out of your room and into the bustling day, not as a passive participant, but as a man with a plan. A man who started his day by asking himself how he could be a force for good in the world. And that, you feel, makes all the difference. The little book is more than a confessional. It's a machine, and like any good machine, it operates on a precise, repeating cycle. This isn't a vague New Year's resolution to be a better person. It's a structured, 13-week course in character engineering, designed by you, for you. The sheer methodical nature of it is what separates it from simple wishful thinking. You open the book to a fresh page, ready to begin a new cycle. The core concept is focus. You understand that trying to fix everything at once is a recipe for failure. The human mind, your reason, can only truly concentrate on one major behavioral change at a time. So, you've decided to give each of your 13 virtues its own week in the spotlight. This week, let's say, here's week 1. At the top of the page, you write the name of the first virtue, temperance. For the next 7 days, your primary focus will be on this single principle. Eat not to dullness, drink not to elevation. You will still be mindful of the other 12 virtues. Of course, the full list remains on the left side of your chart, a constant reminder of the entire system. If you fail in, say, order or silence, you'll still mark a dot in the corresponding box. But your active, conscious effort, your mental energy is directed squarely at temperance. This approach has a hidden genius to it. You theorize that mastering the earlier virtues on the list will make it easier to acquire the later ones. It's a sequential system. Temperance, keeping a clear head, naturally helps with silence, preventing you from saying something foolish when your inhibitions are lowered. A clear and silent mind is better equipped to maintain order. An orderly life makes it easier to be resolute, as you have a clear plan, and so on. Each week builds upon the last, creating a virtuous cycle quite literally. Historians have pointed out that this cascading structure is one of the most psychologically astute parts of your plan. You're rebuilding a foundation before you try to put on the roof. So, for this entire week, you become hyper-aware of your consumption. At lunch, you pause before reaching for a second helping of bread. Is this for nourishment, or for mere pleasure that will lead to afternoon sluggishness? You stop. You've eaten enough. At a meeting with fellow merchants in a tavern, the primary venue for business in your time, you stick to small beer or water while others are on their third pint of strong ale. You remain sharp and observant while they become loud and unfocused. You see the practical benefit almost immediately. At the end of each day, the ritual is the same. Just before your designated sleep time, you pull out the little book. This is the moment of truth, the daily audit. You ask yourself the evening question, what good have I done today? You reflect on your actions, but then comes the accounting. You look at the row for temperance. Did you overindulge at any point? If the answer is no, the line remains beautifully. Satisfied you blank. If you did slip up, perhaps you had that extra piece of cake your landlady offered you. Dip your pen in ink and place a single, small, dark dot in the box for that day. You look at the dot. It's not a symbol of shame. It's deja. It's a quiet, factual admission of an erratum. There's no emotional flagellation. You simply observe it, acknowledge it, and resolve to do better tomorrow. The goal for the week is to see that row for temperance remain as clean as possible. When Sunday evening arrives, the week is over. You might have a few black dots speckling your chart, but hopefully, the line for temperance is clearer than the others. The following Monday, you turn the page. It's week 2. The new focus is silence. Nil. Your primary vigilance shifts. You are on high alert for trifling conversation. You consciously bite your tongue in debates. You listen more than you speak in meetings. You avoid the temptation to share a juicy piece of gossip. You still try to be temperate, but your main effort is now on mastering the art of holding your peace. And so it goes, week by week. Week 3, order. Week 4, resolution. All the way down to week 13. Humility. After 13 weeks have passed, you've completed one full course. You've given each virtue a dedicated week of practice. What happens then? You don't graduate. You don't declare victory. You simply turn back to the beginning and start week 1, course 2. The whole system is designed for a lifetime of practice, not a short-term fix. Some scholars find this relentless, almost robotic. They wonder if it stripped the joy and spontaneity out of life. Others see it as a profound act of mindfulness, a way to live with constant intention. You, in your practical way, probably saw it as no different from maintaining a business ledger. You track your accounts, identify your losses, and adjust your strategy. You were simply applying the principles of good business to the business of being human. The 13-week cycle was your fiscal quarter for the soul. It's week 1, and the first virtue on your list, temperance, is now your primary target. This sounds simple enough. Eat not to dullness, drink not to elevation. But you live in a world where food and drink are central to social and business life. And self-control isn't exactly a celebrated virtue among the general populace. Let's step into your shoes for a typical day. For breakfast, you keep it simple. Your landlady might serve a hearty portion of cornmeal mush, perhaps with a bit of molasses and milk. It's cheap, it's filling, and it aligns perfectly with your goals of both temperance and frugality. While others might indulge in heavy meats or greasy fare, you stick to what keeps your mind clear and your body energized for the morning's work. Lunch is where the first real test often occurs. You might be dining with a potential client for your printing press, or a fellow member of the Pennsylvania Assembly. The table at the local tavern is laden with roasted meats, savory pies, puddings, and freshly baked bread. And, of course, there's alcohol. Beer, cider, and wine flow freely. It's not just for pleasure. It's a social lubricant, a key part of building trust and camaraderie. To refuse a drink can be seen as standoffish, even insulting. Here's where your practice becomes an art. You don't make a grand show of your abstinence. That would be a failure in humility. Instead, you develop strategies. You might accept a tankard of small beer, a much weaker brew, and make it last the entire meal. You learn to raise the glass to your lips without taking a large swig. You engage so actively in conversation, steering it towards productive topics, practicing silence by avoiding trifles, that people hardly notice how little you're consuming. You're mastering the art of participating without partaking to excess. While your companions grow flushed and loud, their thinking clouded by food and drink. You remain sharp. You notice details in the conversation they might miss. You remember the key points of the negotiation while their memory gets hazy. This is the immediate. tangible reward of temperance. It's not an abstract moral victory. It's a competitive advantage. You leave the table not feeling sluggish and sleepy, but clear-headed and ready for an afternoon of industry. Dinner presents a similar challenge. After a long day, the temptation to reward yourself with a large, comforting meal is strong. But you remember the rule. Eat not to dullness. You eat just enough to satisfy your hunger. You discover something profound in this practice. You start to appreciate the simple taste of food more. You learn that a piece of fruit or a handful of nuts can be more satisfying than a heavy stew. You even begin to experiment with vegetarianism, not for any moral reason that a modern vegan would recognize, but for reasons of clarity and economy. You note in your autobiography that a vegetarian diet is cheaper and results in a greater clearness of head and quicker apprehension. This choice makes you a bit of an oddball. In an era where a hearty physique was often seen as a sign of prosperity, your lean diet would have been unusual. It's one of those fascinating, quirky details about you. Here is this titan of industry and politics, this symbol of American pragmatism, and he is quietly eating potatoes and bread while his peers are feasting on venison. Historians are still debating how consistently you maintained this diet throughout your life, but your writings make it clear it was a significant part of your self-improvement regimen. The evening audit with your little book is the final step. You review the day. Did you manage to stick to your simple breakfast? Yes. Did you navigate the business lunch with strategic sips of small beer? Yes. Did you eat a modest dinner? Yes. The row for temperance remains clean. A quiet sense of satisfaction settles over you. It's the feeling of control, of being the master of your own appetites rather than their slave. But some days, you fail. A friend insists you try his new, imported Madeira wine. You have one glass, then another. Your resolve softens. You indulge in a rich dessert. That night, as you mark the black dot in the temperance box, there is no self-loathing. There is only analysis. Why did you fail? The company was too persuasive. The wine was exceptionally good. You were tired and your willpower was low. It's not an excuse. It's a diagnosis. The next time you are in a similar situation, you will be better prepared. You might set a firm to glass limit beforehand, or steer the conversation away from the wine. This is the essence of your struggle with temperance. It's not about purity. It's about performance. It's a daily, conscious effort to optimize your physical and mental machine for the bold and arduous project you've set for yourself. And by conquering this first, most fundamental virtue, you are building the foundation for everything that is to come. Week 2 arrives, and your focus shifts from the stomach to the mouth. The new virtue is silence. Speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. For a man like you, this is a challenge far greater than turning down a second pint of ale. You are, by nature, a talker, a debater, a persuader. Your wit is one of your sharpest tools, and you've honed it since you were a boy, arguing politics and philosophy with anyone who would listen. Now, you've tasked yourself with sheathing that sword. Your days in the print shop are filled with conversation. Customers come in to place orders. Suppliers haggle over the price of paper. And your apprentice needs constant instruction. The rule isn't to become a mute. It's to be intentional. Before you speak, a new mental filter clicks into place. Will this benefit anyone? You start to notice how much of daily chatter is just noise. The temptation to share a witty but slightly unkind remark about a competitor, to engage in idle gossip about a local politician, or to correct someone on a minor factual error just to prove you're smarter. All these impulses now set off an internal alarm. The hardest arena for this practice is your Junta Club. This is your club of mutual improvement. A group of a dozen like-minded artisans and tradesmen you brought together to discuss morals, politics, and natural philosophy. It is, by design, a debating society. In the past, you reveled in these discussions. You loved to lay logical traps for your friends, to back them into corners with Socratic questioning, to win the argument. It was an intellectual sport, and you were the star player. But now, with silence as your guiding star, you adopt a new role. You listen. You let others speak their minds fully, without interruption. When you do speak, It's not to contradict, but to ask clarifying questions or to offer a piece of information that moves the conversation forward. You find yourself saying things like, "I'm not sure I fully understand your point. Could you elaborate?" Or, "That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't considered it that way." At first, it's painful. Your ego screams. You see the flaws in their arguments. The perfect witty retort forms on your lips, but you hold it back. You consciously practice the humility you added to your list. Even though its official week is still far off, you discover something remarkable. By speaking less, your words gain more weight. When you finally do offer an opinion, people listen more intently because it's a rarer commodity. You also find that by not being focused on your own next brilliant statement, you actually hear what others are saying. You learn more. Your friendships with the junta members deepen, as they no longer see you as a formidable opponent in a debate, but as a genuine collaborator in the search for truth. This practice of silence has a quirky side effect, a technique you become famous for. You decide to ban certain words from your vocabulary. At least in public discourse, you stop using words that imply rigid, unshakable opinion, like certainly and undoubtedly. Instead, you adopt phrases of deliberate modesty. You say, "I conceive," or "I apprehend," or "it appears to me," or "I should think it so or so." Historians absolutely love this detail. It's a fascinating psychological trick. On one hand, it's a manifestation of your quest for humility. On the other, it's an incredibly effective rhetorical strategy. By appearing less dogmatic, you make your arguments more persuasive. You avoid triggering the defensive instincts of your conversation partner. It's harder to argue with someone who says "it seems to me" than with someone who declares it is obvious that. This linguistic habit, born from your little book, would become a hallmark of your diplomatic style, helping you navigate the treacherous waters of colonial politics and, eventually, the royal courts of Europe. It was a masterclass in soft power, practiced daily in a dusty Philadelphia print shop. The nightly audit for silence is different from the one for temperance. It's more subjective. Did you engage in trifling conversation? You have to be your own judge. That bit of shop talk about the weather, was it a necessary social lubricant or a waste of time? That debate over dinner, did you contribute productively or just try to win? You sit with your little book, replaying the day's conversations in your head. A black dot in the silence rule feels different. It's not a failure of the body, but a failure of the ego. As the week progresses, you find a new kind of peace. The world seems less like a constant battle of weights. There's a certain quiet power in observation, a strength in restraint. You are learning that true influence doesn't always come from the loudest voice in the room, but often from the most thoughtful. You are not just learning when to close your mouth. You are learning how to open your mind. Week 3. You turn the page in your little book, and your gaze falls upon a single, terrifying word. Order. The rule is, let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. Of all the 13 virtues, this is the one that will become your lifelong nemesis. It's the mountain you will climb again and again, only to find yourself sliding back down its face. You look around your life, and chaos looks back. Let's start with your desk. You're a printer, a writer, a budding scientist, and an insatiably curious man. This means your desk is a perpetual explosion of paper. There are half-finished essays for the Gazette, letters from contacts in other colonies, bills to be paid, books open to a particularly interesting page, scribbled notes on everything from electrical theory to the best way to pave a street. You start the week with a surge of motivation. You designate a drawer for correspondence, a shelf for current reading, a spindle for paid invoices. For a day, maybe 2. It is a thing of beauty, a sanctuary of organization. But then life happens. A rush printing job comes in, and you're buried in proofs and layouts. An idea for a new invention strikes, and you hastily sketch it on the back of a nearby letter. A friend from the junta drops off a fascinating book, and it gets added to the pile. By Wednesday, the desk is once again a glorious, sprawling mess. You can find things. Mostly, your memory is excellent, a gift you're acutely aware of. You know that the notes on improving chimney design are under that stack of almanacs. This, you tell yourself, is a kind of organic order, but it's not the systematic place for everything order your little book demands. This struggle is a source of immense frustration for you. In your autobiography, written many years later, you will confess your failure with a charming, self-deprecating honesty. You'll write that order was so difficult for you to achieve, and you were so often found wanting, that you were tempted to give up the whole project. You grumbled that a man with a perfect memory has little need for such strict organization. You even devised a clever excuse. A perfectly orderly shop would make customers think you weren't busy enough. This specific failure has fascinated historians for centuries. Why could a man who could master his diet, his ego, and his schedule not conquer a messy desk? Some argue it reveals a fundamental tension in your personality. The methodical planner versus the creative, free associating thinker. A truly creative mind, they suggest, thrives in a certain amount of clutter, a fertile chaos where unexpected connections can be made. Trying to force it into a rigid system was like trying to train a cat to walk on a leash, unnatural and ultimately futile. It's a comforting thought for anyone who has ever wrestled with their own disorganized tendencies. The second part of the rule, let each part of your business have its time, refers to your famous daily schedule. This you have a bit more success with. You've mapped out your 24 hours with logical precision. The morning block for study, the two main blocks for work, the lunch break, the evening for music, diversion, or conversation. It's a beautiful plan. The problem isn't the plan, it's the interruptions. A customer with an urgent request that throws your whole afternoon off. A political meeting that runs long. An evening with friends that is too enjoyable to cut short for the sake of a systematic examination of the day. You try your best. You work with a focused intensity during your designated work hours. You try to wrap things up in the evening to have time for your books and your music. You play the harp, the guitar, and the glass harmonica, an instrument of your own invention. But life, you discover, is messy. It doesn't fit neatly into tune for our box. At the end of each day during order week, you look at your chart with a sigh. The desk was a mess. The schedule was compromised. You pick up the pen and make the familiar black dot. The row for order on your chart starts to look like it has the measles. It is, by far, your most bloated line. This is where a lesser man might give up. The goal is perfection, and you are so clearly, so consistently, imperfect in this one area. But you don't give up. Instead, you do something remarkable. You find peace in the failure. You acknowledge that, for you, the speckled axe is best. You tell a story of a blacksmith who wanted his axe to be perfectly bright and shiny. He worked and worked at the grindstone, but to get every last speck off would mean grinding the axe down to nothing. So he decided he liked the speckled axe best after all. You decide that the benefits of a perfectly orderly life might not be worth the Herculean effort it would take you to achieve it. You accept your nature. This acceptance of imperfection within a project aimed at perfection is perhaps the most profound lesson you learn from the entire experiment. It's a moment of grace, a quiet acknowledgement that some battles aren't worth winning. After the frustrating, chaotic week of order, you turn the page to week 4, and a new virtue, resolution, resolve to perform what you ought, perform without fail what you resolve. If order was your great weakness, resolution is your superpower. It is the engine that drives the entire, audacious project of self-improvement. It's the promise you make to yourself to actually do the things you say you're going to do. This virtue feels different. It's not about restraining an appetite or organizing your space. It's about pure willpower. It's the inner command that gets you out of bed at 5 when the room is freezing. It's the mental fortitude that keeps you at the printing press for an 8-hour shift of physically demanding labor. It's the grit that allows you to look at a week of failures like the ink-spotted row for order, and instead of despairing, you simply turn the page and begin again. You see a lack of resolution all around you. The city is full of men with grand ideas and half-finished projects. The aspiring merchant who talks about opening a new shipping route but never gets around to securing the capital. The inventor with a brilliant sketch for a new kind of water pump who leaves it gathering dust in a drawer. The politician who makes bold promises on the campaign trail and then settles for comfortable inaction once in office. They lack the second half of the equation, Perform without fail what you resolve. For you, an idea is a contract with yourself, and you are not a man who breaks his contracts. Let's see this in action. You've resolved to learn French. It is the language of diplomacy, science, and high culture. A man with your ambitions needs to know it. This isn't a vague wish. It becomes a line item in your schedule. Under the prosecute the present study block. Every morning, for a set amount of time. Use it with your grammar books and vocabulary lists. It's tedious. It's difficult. Your English tongue stumbles over the foreign sounds. There are 100 other things you could be doing. But you made a resolution. So you perform, day after day, week after week. There's a famous story about how you mastered Italian alongside your chess partner. Both of you were procrastinating on your language studies. To motivate yourselves, you made a pact. The loser of each chess game would have to complete a rigorous set of Italian exercises before the next match. You were so determined to avoid the grammar drills that you became a much better chess player. But you also found that losing wasn't so bad because it forced you to learn. In the end, you both became fluent in Italian. This is resolution in its purest form, creating systems and commitments that make it impossible for you to back down. Historians have often debated the source of this iron will. Was it an innate part of your personality, or was it a skill you cultivated? The existence of this very virtue in your list suggests the latter. You saw resolution not as a fixed trait, but as a muscle to be exercised. Every time you followed through on a small commitment, tidying your desk for 5 minutes, reading for 1 hour, refusing that extra drink, you were doing a rep for your resolution muscle. It grew stronger with use. The practice of resolution also changes your relationship with the future. You don't just hope for things to happen. You decide they will happen and then work backward to create the steps. You decide Philadelphia needs a public lending library. This is a monumental task. There are no public libraries in the American colonies. It's a completely novel idea. You don't just talk about it. You resolve to do it. You write a proposal. You leverage your Junta Club as a core group of subscribers. You use your printing press to create compelling materials. You go door to door, persuading, cajoling, and collecting subscriptions. You face skepticism and refusal, but your resolution is unshakable. And in 1731, the Library Company of Philadelphia is born. It started as a resolution, a sentence in your mind, and you willed it into a brick-and-mortar reality that still exists today. During Resolution Week, your nightly audit with the little book is a start. Binary affair. You look at the tasks you set for the day. Did you do them? Yes or no? There's no room for excuses. If you resolved to write a difficult letter and you put it off, you mark a black dot. Each dot is a small betrayal of yourself. It's a reminder that your willpower faltered. You find that a clean row for resolution feels more satisfying than any other. A clean temperance row means you controlled your body. A clean silence row means you controlled your ego. But a clean resolution row means you are in command of your own destiny. It means your actions are aligned with your intentions. It is the feeling of being a cause, not an effect. This virtue is the bridge between the man you are and the man you intend to be. It is the foundation of your power. The quiet, unyielding force that will transform a humble Philadelphia printer into one of the most influential figures of his century. The calendar turns to week 5, and the virtue is frugality. Make no expense but to do good to others or yourself. Waste nothing. This isn't just about being cheap. For you, frugality is a strategic allocation of resources. Every shilling saved is capital that can be reinvested into your business, into your community, or into your own education. It's a philosophy of mindful spending that underpins your entire ascent from poverty to wealth. You make your frugality a very public performance. You want the citizens of Philadelphia to see you as a hard-working, plain, and trustworthy man. You trundle your own paper supplies through the streets in a wheelbarrow. A sight that would have been shocking for a business owner who could have easily paid someone to do it. Your clothes are simple and durable, free from the expensive lace and silver buckles favored by other men of your station. You are building a brand. The brand is Poor Richard, the wise but humble almanac character you created. who dispenses witty sayings about the value of a penny saved. Your diet, already moderated by your commitment to temperance, becomes another tool for frugality. You famously record a meal that consisted of a biscuit, a handful of raisins, and a glass of water. You note with satisfaction that while your co-workers were out for a long and expensive lunch, you ate your simple meal at the print shop, saved money, and used the extra time to read. You are turning thrift into a competitive advantage. This is where things get interesting, because your public persona of extreme frugality might have been just that, a persona. Some historians argue that while you were publicly pushing a wheelbarrow, you were privately developing a taste for finer things. You bought high-quality books, invested in scientific equipment, and later in life, enjoyed the comforts of a well-appointed home. This isn't hypocrisy. It fits your rule perfectly. Make no expense but to do good to others or yourself. A book wasn't a frivolous expense. It was an investment in your mind, doing good to yourself. A contribution to a new hospital was an investment in the community, doing good to others. The rule isn't spend no money, it's waste no money. Let's look at your business, the print shop. Dear, frugality is about efficiency. You reuse packing materials. You are careful with your expensive paper stock, calculating jobs to minimize offcuts. You maintain your own printing press, learning how to make small repairs yourself rather than paying a specialist. You even mix your own ink to get a better price and quality. This isn't just penny pinching. It's a deep understanding of your business's cash flow. The money you save allows you to undercut your competitors' prices while still turning a profit. It allows you to invest in better typefaces from London, which makes your newspaper and pamphlets look more professional. Your frugality directly fuels your business's growth. This virtue also has a curious connection to your social life. In a society where lavish entertaining was a way to display status, you took a different path. When you had friends over, you might serve simple food and drink. Your real offering was not expensive wine, but brilliant conversation, intellectual stimulation, and genuine fellowship. You were training people to value you for your mind and character, not for your material possessions. It was a subtle but powerful shift in social dynamics. The nightly audit for frugality involves a mental accounting of the day's expenses. Did you buy that new quill because you needed it, or because it looked fancy? Was the extra firewood you burned necessary for warmth, or was it a thoughtless waste? You become acutely aware of the flow of money and resources in your life. A black dot in the frugality row of your little book represents a leak in your financial ship. It's a reminder that a small, unnecessary expense is a form of disorder, a failure of planning. There is, however, a potential downside to this intense focus on frugality, which scholars love to debate. Did it make you seem cold or calculating? Your estranged son, William, would later accuse you of being emotionally distant and overly focused on material and practical concerns. Your own wife, Deborah, managed the household and shop with incredible thrift, but we know very little about whether she shared your philosophical devotion to the concept or simply bore the burden of it. Was your frugality a shared family project, or was it your personal obsession that others had to accommodate? The historical record is largely silent on this, leaving us to wonder about the hidden human cost of your relentless self-optimization. But for you, in your 20s and 30s, frugality is freedom. It frees you from debt, which you see as a form of slavery. It frees you from the need to please wealthy patrons. It frees you to pursue projects that you believe in, like the library, the volunteer fire department, and the University of Pennsylvania. You are accumulating not just money, but independence. Frugality isn't about having less. It's about having more of what truly matters. Control over your own life. Week 6. Your focus now shifts to the clock. The virtue is industry. Lose no time. Be always employed in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. This is the gospel of productivity, the beating heart of your entire system. If resolution is the engine and frugality is the fuel, then industry is the relentless, forward motion of the machine. Your famous daily schedule is the blueprint for this virtue. It's a declaration of war against wasted moments. You wake at 5, from 5 to 7. You're not just awake. You're studying, planning, actively improving your mind. This is stolen time. Time your competitors are dreaming away when your official workday begins at 8. You are already mentally sharp and fully engaged. Step into the print shop with you. The air is thick with the metallic smell of lead type and the chemical tang of ink. This is not a quiet, contemplative space. It is a factory, and you are its hardest working laborer. You don't just supervise. You sit type by hand, a task that requires intense focus and dexterity. You operate a heavy wooden press, a physically grueling job that works your arms and back. You are a leather apron man, and you earn that title with sweat. You see unnecessary actions everywhere, and you ruthlessly eliminate them. You organize your typecases not just for neatness, the ghost of order still haunts you, but for speed. The most frequently used letters are placed where your hand can find them most quickly and easily. This is an 18th century version of ergonomics. You analyze your workflow. Is it faster to ink all the pages at once, or one at a time? Is it more efficient to have your apprentice read the copy while you set the type, or to do both tasks sequentially? You are constantly tinkering, optimizing, trying to shave minutes off every task. The phrase time is money is not just a pithy saying from your Prue Richard's almanac. It is the fundamental operating principle of your life. You see every hour as a container that must be filled with value. If you are not working to earn money, you must be working to improve yourself or your community. There is no in between. Even your leisure time is structured and purposeful. Your evening block is for music or diversion, or conversation. This isn't mindless channel surfing. It's playing your harmonica, engaging with your Junta Club, or reading something for pleasure that still enriches your mind. This relentless drought can be exhausting to even read about. A strange and wonderful little fact that historians point to is your invention of bifocals. While most people see this as an invention for convenience, it can also be seen through the lens of industry. You were tired of having to switch between two pairs of glasses, one for reading, one for distance. The act of switching was wasted time, an unnecessary action. So you cut two pairs of lenses in half and put them in a single frame. It was a perfect, elegant solution that saved you a few seconds, dozens of times a day. It was an invention born from a deep, personal obsession with efficiency. Of course, this non-stop industry has a social impact. People in Philadelphia see you. They see you opening your shop at dawn and closing it long after others have gone home. They see you hauling your own supplies. They see you constantly working, reading, improving. This builds a formidable reputation. When people need a printer who will meet a deadline, they come to you. When a civic project needs a leader who will see it through, they nominate you. Your industry becomes your greatest marketing tool. It builds a level of trust that no advertisement could buy. The nightly check-in with your little book is a review of your day's timeline. Where did the time go? You look for gaps, for moments of idleness. Did you spend too long chatting with a neighbor when you should have been writing? Did you find yourself daydreaming at the press? A black dot in the industry row is a mark against a moment you can never get back. It's a reminder that your most valuable, non-renewable resource time was squandered. The scholarly debate here is obvious. Did you ever truly rest? Did this obsession with industry rob you of the simple, joyful, and necessary act of doing nothing at all? Some biographers paint a picture of a man who was almost pathologically incapable of being idle. They suggest that your constant activity was a way to keep darker thoughts or anxieties at bay. Others argue that you found genuine joy and satisfaction in your work. For you, the opposite of industry wasn't rest. It was sloth, a state you viewed with contempt. Your form of rest was simply to switch from one form of productive activity like printing to another like playing music. For you, a life filled with useful action was not a burden. It was the very definition of a life well lived. We arrive at week 7, halfway through the first cycle of your grand experiment. The virtue you've chosen is sincerity. Use no hurtful deceit. Think innocently and justly. And if you speak accordingly. This one is slippery. It's not as measurable as frugality or as straightforward as industry. It's a virtue of the inner world, a commitment to aligning your thoughts, your intentions, and your words On the surface, it seems simple. Don't lie. And in your business dealings, you strive to be a man of your word. If you promise a pamphlet will be printed by Tuesday, it's ready on Tuesday. Your reputation for reliability, built on a foundation of industry, is reinforced by this commitment to sincerity. People trust you because you say what you mean and do what you say. But the rule is more complex than just don't lie. It also says, use no hurtful deceit. This implies that some forms of deceit might be, well, not hurtful, and here we enter a fascinating gray area, especially for a man who will become one of the world's great diplomats. You are, after all, the same person who created the public persona of Poor Richard. You write his almanacs, filling them with wisdom that you attribute to this fictional, folksy character. Is this a hurtful deceit? No, it's a literary device, a clever piece of branding. You also become a master of political satire. You will, at various times, write hoax articles and satirical essays to make a political point, including a famous one suggesting that the American colonies should repay Great Britain for sending convicts by shipping them rattlesnakes. This is clearly not sincere in the literal sense, but its purpose, in your mind, is to reveal a deeper truth, to expose the injustice of British policy. You are using a form of untruth to serve what you see as a just cause. This is where your personal practice of sincerity gets complicated and endlessly debatable for historians. How did you reconcile your commitment to sincerity with the very necessary arts of diplomacy and persuasion? In a negotiation, do you sincerely reveal your entire strategy to your opponent? In a political debate, do you naively state your deepest fears and weaknesses? Of course not. Your practice of sincerity seems to be less about radical, unfiltered honesty and more about intellectual integrity. The second part of the rule is key. Think innocently, unjustly. This is a command to purify your own motives. Before you act or speak, you must check in with yourself. Is your intention to be helpful or to be hurtful? Are you trying to clarify or to confuse? Are you seeking a fair outcome or a selfish advantage? Sincerity, for you, is about ensuring your actions spring from a clean source. A wonderful, and perhaps slightly funny, example of this is how you handle your business rivals. There's another printer in town, a man named Samuel Keimer. He is your former boss and now your direct competitor. It would be easy to badmouth him, to spread rumors, to engage in the cutthroat business practices of the day, but you try a different path. You maintain a civil, if competitive, relationship. You even lend him some of your unique typefaces for a job at one point. This isn't because you're a saint. It's because you believe that acting with integrity and fairness, thinking justly, is the best long-term strategy. It builds a reputation that will outlast any short-term gains from backstabbing. The nightly audit for sincerity is deeply introspective. You have to replay the day's interactions and be brutally honest with yourself about your own motives. When you praised a fellow John to member's idea, was it a genuine appreciation or a subtle form of flattery designed to win his support on another issue? When you wrote that article criticizing a political opponent, was it based on a just grievance? Or was it tinged with personal animosity? Marking a black dot for a failure in sincerity is a quiet, private admission of hypocrisy. It's acknowledging a moment when your outward actions didn't match your inner principles. There's a particular kind of sting to this failure. It's not about losing money or time. It's about losing a piece of your own integrity. Some scholars argue that your version of sincerity was intensely pragmatic, almost a performance. You cultivated the appearance of being sincere because it was useful. It made people trust you, which in turn made you successful. Others argue that this is too cynical a view. They believe you genuinely struggled to be a man of integrity and that your public persona was an outward expression of a real inner commitment. The truth is likely a fusion of both. You understood, with a clarity that few possess, that in the long run, good ethics are good business. By aligning your personal virtue with your public strategy, you created a powerful feedback loop where each reinforced the other. You weren't just being sincere. You were engineering sincerity to be a cornerstone of your success. Kate brings you to a virtue that expands your focus from your own character to your role in the wider world. The virtue is justice. Wrong none by doing injuries, or omitting the benefits that are your duty. This is a crucial pivot point in your plan. The first 7 virtues are largely about self-mastery. Justice is about citizenship. It's about understanding that a perfected individual has an obligation to the community. The first part is straightforward. Wrong none by doing injuries. This is the passive side of justice. It means being an honest businessman, a fair employer, and a law-abiding citizen. In your print shop, it means paying your suppliers on time. It means delivering the quality of work you promise to your customers. It means treating your apprentices with firmness but also with fairness, providing them with food, lodging, and real training, not just exploiting their cheap labor as many masters did. You see this as the baseline, the absolute minimum standard for a moral life. To actively harm another person through deceit or unfairness is a profound failure, but it's the second half of the rule that is truly radical and defines your public life, or omitting the benefits that are your duty. This is the active side of justice. It implies that you have a duty to do good. It's a sin of omission to see a problem you could help solve and do nothing. You believe that your talents, your energy, and your growing influence are not just for your own benefit. They are resources to be deployed for the public good. You look around Philadelphia and you see problems everywhere. The city has no official watchman, making the streets dark and dangerous at night. The volunteer firefighting system is a chaotic mess of rival gangs. There's no hospital for the poor. For most people, these are just unfortunate facts of life. For you, they are a call to action. They are an omitted benefit that it is your duty to provide. Let's take the library. You love books, but they are expensive and rare. Only the wealthy can afford a personal collection. You see this as an injustice. Access to knowledge, you believe, is a right that benefits the entire community by creating more informed and capable citizens. So you don't just complain about it. You methodically apply the virtues you've been practicing. You use your resolution to start the project, your industry to push it forward, your frugality to design a sustainable subscription model, and your sincerity on diplomatic silence to persuade others to join. The Library Company of Philadelphia isn't just a passion project. It is an act of justice, as you define it. You are providing a benefit that you feel is a duty. Then you turn your attention to fire safety. You write articles in your gazette about the need for a more organized system. You don't just criticize, you propose a solution. In 1736, you found the Union Fire Company, the first organized volunteer fire department in the city. It's based on a written agreement where members pledge to come to each other's aid. It's a system built on mutual duty. This is justice in its most practical form, saving homes and lives through foresight and organization. This interpretation of justice as an obligation to actively improve society is one of your most enduring legacies. It's a philosophy that would later be called civic virtue. The idea that a successful citizen has a responsibility to give back to the community is something you didn't just preach. You lived it. You would go on to help establish a hospital, the University of Pennsylvania, a street paving initiative, and even a local militia for defense. Historians have long debated the motivation behind this flurry of civic activity. Was it pure altruism, a genuine expression of your virtue of justice, or was it a brilliant form of political networking? By founding these organizations, you placed yourself at the center of every important development in the city. You built a network of influence and obligation that was far more powerful than any formal political office. The answer, as is so often the case with you, is probably both. You were a pragmatist. You saw no contradiction between doing good and doing well. A safer, better educated, more prosperous Philadelphia was good for everyone, including a certain ambitious printer. The nightly audit for justice requires a broad perspective. You ask yourself, did I wrong anyone today? Did I cheat a customer or speak unfairly of a rival? But then you have to ask the harder question. Did I see a chance to do good and fail to act? Did I walk past a problem I could have helped solve? A black dot in the justice row is a heavy one. It means you not only failed yourself, but you failed your community. It's a reminder that your project of self-perfection is meaningless if it remains a purely private affair, locked inside your little book. After the outward-facing demands of justice, You arrive at week 9 in the virtue that requires a delicate internal balance. Moderation. The rule is, avoid extremes, forbear resenting injuries so much as you think they deserve. This is a fascinating, almost paradoxical virtue to find inside a project that is, in itself, an extreme pursuit of perfection. You are, in essence, scheduling a weekly reminder to not be too extreme in your quest to be, well, perfect. The first part, avoid extremes, is a governor on your personality. You have a massive appetite for knowledge, for work, for projects. Moderation is the voice that tells you not to let your industry become workaholism, not to let your frugality become miserliness, and not to let your quest for temperance become a joyless asceticism. It's the art of the golden mean. You see the dangers of extremism all around you. In religion, you see fiery preachers who condemn all pleasure. In politics, you see radicals who are willing to tear down society rather than compromise. In your personal life, you know your own tendency to go on an idea. Moderation is the skill of finding the productive middle ground. For example, in a political debate, instead of trying to crush your opponent to failure of silence and humility, you practice moderation. You acknowledge the valid points on the other side. You look for a compromise that serves the public good, rather than insisting on a total victory for your own faction. This makes you an incredibly effective politician and mediator. People trust you to be a reasonable voice in a room full of hotheads. The second part of the rule is more personal and psychologically deep. Forbear resenting injuries so much as you think they deserve. This is about emotional regulation. It's a command to let go of grudges. In your life as a public figure, a writer, and a businessman, you collect injuries like a ship collects barnacles. A rival printer writes a scathing attack on you. A politician you trusted betrays you. A business partner fails to hold up his end of a bargain. The natural human instinct is to feel the full, burning force of that injustice. You think they deserve your lasting resentment, your anger, your desire for revenge, and this is where moderation steps in. It's not telling you not to feel angry or hurt. It's telling you not to let that feeling consume you. You consciously decide to dial it back. You resent the injury just enough to learn a lesson from it, perhaps not to trust that person again, but not so much that it poisons your own mind. A classic example is your relationship with your brother, James, the printer to whom you were apprenticed as a boy. James was often harsh and tyrannical. You fled his workshop in Boston, an act that made you a fugitive apprentice. You could have carried that bitterness for your entire life. And for a time, you did. But as you grow older and practice these virtues, you choose moderation. When you visit Boston as a successful, independent man, you go to see him. You mend the relationship. You even take his son on as an apprentice yourself, giving him the opportunities you never had. This is the ultimate expression of forbearing resentment. You don't forget the injury, but you refuse to let it define the future. This specific virtue has led to some fascinating discussions among scholars. Is this a sign of genuine forgiveness and emotional maturity, or is it another example of your supreme pragmatism? Holding a grudge, after all, is inefficient. It consumes mental energy that could be better spent on something useful. It can close doors to future alliances. Forgiving an old rival might be the most strategic move you can make. It can turn a former enemy into a future ally. The historical debate is whether you let go of grudges for your own peace of mind or because it was simply the most logical and advantageous thing to do. Perhaps you were clever enough to realize those two things are often one and the same. The nightly audit for moderation is subtle. You have to scan your own emotional state. Did you fly off the handle at your apprentice for a small mistake? That's a failure of moderation. Are you still fuming about an argument from yesterday? That's a failure to forbear resenting. A black dot in the moderation row is a sign that your passions have overridden your reason. It's a reminder that being in control of yourself isn't just about what you do, but also about what you choose not to do, like nurse a grievance or cling to an extreme position. In the context of your grand plan, moderation is the safety valve. It's what keeps the relentless pressure of the other 12 virtues from causing a catastrophic failure. It's the wisdom that allows you to accept the speckled acts of an imperfectly ordered desk. It's the gentle reminder that the goal is to be a better man, not a flawless, unfeeling machine. It is, in a way, the most human of all your chosen virtues. You wrestled with your schedule, your spending, and your temper? No. In week 10, you turn to a virtue that is deceptively simple. Cleanliness. The rule is stark and absolute. Tolerate no uncleanliness in body, clothes, or habitation. For a modern reader, this seems like basic hygiene, but in the mid-18th century, this was a radical commitment. Let's paint a picture of your world. Philadelphia is a bustling port city, but it has no sewer system. People throw their household waste, including the contents of their chamber pots, into the streets. The roads are unpaved, turning to thick, sucking mud in the rain and kicking up clouds of dust in the dry season. Animal droppings are everywhere. Personal bathing is infrequent and often viewed with suspicion, thought to expose the body to sickness. Most people just washed their hands and face. A full-body bath was a rare, and often cold, undertaking. So when you commit to cleanliness, you are setting yourself apart. It starts with your body. While a weekly bath might be the norm for the very fastidious, you make a point of regular washing. It's not just about health. It's about the feeling of clarity it brings, much like your temperate diet. A clean body, you feel, contributes to a clear mind. Then there are your clothes. As a printer, your work is dirty. Ink and dust are your constant companions. But you make a point of wearing a clean shirt and maintaining your leather apron. Your appearance, like your frugality, is part of your public image. You are the leather apron man, but you are a clean and respectable tradesman. This communicates reliability and attention to detail. Would you trust a legal document to a printer with ink-smeared fingers and a grimy collar? You bank on the answer being no. Your clean clothes become a subtle advertisement for your meticulous work. The biggest challenge is your habitation. This means your rented rooms and, crucially, your print shop. You sweep the floors daily, not just to look good, but because you understand that dust and dirt are bad for your expensive printing equipment. You keep your stacks of paper neatly covered to protect them from grime. Customers who enter your shop don't step into a dark, dusty hovel. They enter a space that feels bright, orderly, and efficient. It's another small but powerful way to build trust and confidence. This personal commitment to cleanliness soon spills over into your civic life, becoming a perfect example of how your virtues radiate outward. You look at the filthy streets of Philadelphia not just with disgust, but with a problem-solving eye. The muck and mire and uncleanliness that the city tolerates, and your rule says you should tolerate no such thing. This is an offense against both cleanliness and justice, omitting the benefits that are your duty. So, what do? You don't just complain. You invent. You propose a comprehensive street sweeping program, funded by a subscription from the residents of each street. You use your gazette to build public support for the idea, writing articles explaining the health and commercial benefits of clean streets. Your aha moment is realizing that just sweeping isn't enough if the streets are unpaved. So you become a tireless advocate for paving the city's central roads, designing a better drainage system, and even lobbying for improved street lighting to make the clean streets safer at night. This is where a quirky and little-known historical fact comes in. Your interest in clean air was just as strong as your interest in clean streets. The city was often choked with smoke from inefficient fireplaces. You studied the problem, analyzed the fluid dynamics of heat and smoke, and invented the Pennsylvania fireplace, now known as the Franklin stove. It was a metal-lined furnace that sat in the middle of the room. It produced more heat with less wood and, most importantly, vented smoke more efficiently out of the house. You refused to patent it, writing that you would rather it be widely adopted for the public good. It was an invention born directly from your commitment to cleanliness and your desire to improve your habitation on a citywide scale. The nightly audit for cleanliness is a sensory one. You look at your hands. Are they clean? You glance at your shirt from the day. Is it presentable? You look at the corner of your room. Is there a pile of dust gathering? A black dot in the cleanliness row is a pretty straightforward affair. It's a failure of basic maintenance. Some might see this virtue as superficial compared to justice or moderation. But for you, it was all part of the same system. You believe that outer order and cleanliness reflected and reinforced inner order and clarity. A clean environment was less distracting, more conducive to industry and clear thought. By scrubbing your floors, washing your clothes, and eventually cleaning up the very streets of your city, you were creating the optimal conditions for your bold and arduous project to succeed, both for yourself and for your fellow citizens. Week 11 arrives, bringing with it a challenge for your nervous system. The virtue is tranquility. Be not disturbed at trifles, or at accidents common or unavoidable. This is your 18th century formula for emotional resilience, a conscious effort to cultivate a calm and unflappable mind in a world filled with frustrations, big and small. A trifle in your daily life could be anything. It could be a batch of ink that turns out to be poor quality, forcing you to redo a job. It could be a customer who haggles less endlessly over a tiny fee, wasting your precious time. It could be a typo that slips through your careful proofreading and makes it into the final print of the Gazette. These are the small annoyances that can ruin a day, that can cause a surge of anger or frustration completely out of proportion to the actual problem. Your practice of tranquility is a form of cognitive therapy. When a trifle occurs, you train yourself to pause before reacting. The ink is bad. Okay, getting angry won't fix it. It will only cloud your judgment and waste your energy. You consciously take a breath and assess the situation with the calm detachment of a scientist. The problem is the ink. The solution is to source new ink and reprint the job. You focus on the solution, not the emotion of the problem. It's a subtle mental shift from this is a disaster to this is a problem to be solved. Then there's the second part of the rule. Be not disturbed at accidents common or unavoidable. This is about accepting the things that are entirely out of your control. A sudden downpour soaks a shipment of paper you were expecting. A key piece of your printing press breaks down from metal fatigue. A powerful political figure you were counting on for support suddenly dies. These are not just trifles, they are significant setbacks. Your commitment to tranquility means you must meet these events not with rage or despair, but with a stoic acceptance. You cannot change the fact that it rained or that the metal broke. To be disturbed by it is to suffer twice, once from the event itself, and a second time from your own emotional reaction to it. You see this as a gross inefficiency. Your practice is to acknowledge the reality of the situation, assess the damage, and immediately pivot to contingency planning. The paper is ruined. You need to order more. The press is broken. You need to find a blacksmith who can repair it. This particular virtue is one that biographers find fascinating when they look at the major crises of your life. When your 4-year-old son, Francis, died of smallpox, you were devastated. This was no trifle, no common accident, but the greatest tragedy of your life. Yet, in your public and private writings, while your grief is palpable, it is expressed with a profound and heartbreaking restraint. You channeled your energy into becoming a vocal advocate for smallpox inoculation, a controversial procedure at the time. You used your personal tragedy as fuel for a public good campaign, a way to prevent other parents from suffering the same fate. Scholars still debate this. Was this restraint a sign of you successfully practicing tranquility under the most extreme duress? Or was it a feature of a personality that struggled to express deep emotion? The truth is likely complex and unknowable, a mixture of a father's profound grief and a philosopher's attempt to find purpose in suffering. A less tragic, but equally telling, example is your constant battle with political opponents. Throughout your career, you were attacked in newspapers, slandered in pamphlets, and betrayed by colleagues. A younger you, the boy who loved to win arguments in Boston, would have leapt into the fray, firing back with witty and vicious retorts. But the you who practices tranquility chooses a different path. Often, your response to a public attack was a calculated silence, correctly assuming that a fiery rebuttal would only give your critics the attention they craved. You understood that the public's memory is short, and that the best way to extinguish a fire is to deny it oxygen. This wasn't weakness, it was strategic calm. The nightly audit for tranquility is a review of your emotional volatility. Did you lose your temper over a small mistake? Did you spend hours worrying about something you couldn't control? A black dot in the tranquility row marks a moment when the outside world managed to breach your inner peace. It's a sign that your happiness and effectiveness were dictated by external events rather than by your own internal state. By practicing tranquility, you are building a mental fortress. You are learning to separate the event from your reaction to it. This inner peace is not a state of blissful ignorance. It's a source of immense power. A calm mind can think more clearly, make better decisions, and lead more effectively. In the chaotic, unpredictable world of the 18th century, your ability to remain undisturbed was perhaps your greatest and most underestimated asset. Week 12. You are nearing the end of the first full cycle of your virtuous course. The virtue for this week is chastity. The way you phrase this one in your little book is telling. Rarely use when or why, but for health or offspring. Never to dullness, weakness, or the injury of your own, or another's peace, or reputation. By far, the most private and delicate of the virtues, and the one you are most circumspect about in your public writings. Let's be clear, you are not a Puritan. You are a man of flesh and blood, living in an era with different social norms from our own. Your goal with this virtue is not religious purity, but pragmatic self-management, much like your approach to temperance. Notice the language. You tie it directly to practical outcomes like health, reputation, and the avoidance of weakness. In your famous autobiography, you are remarkably candid, though not explicit, about your own youthful errata in this area. Before your marriage, you admit to having intrigues with low women that you later regretted. This wasn't a moral confession in the religious sense. It was a practical one. You regretted it because it was a poor use of your time and money, a failure of industry and frugality. It risked your health, and it could have damaged the reputation you were so carefully trying to build. Your most significant erratum was fathering an illegitimate son, William. The identity of William's mother remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of your life, a subject of endless speculation by historians. We don't know the circumstances of his birth. What we do know is that you did something highly unusual and brave for the time. You acknowledged him. You brought him into your home to be raised by you and your new wife, Deborah Reed. This act speaks volumes. It shows you taking responsibility for your past actions, a core tenet of your entire self-improvement project. So, your practice of chastity is deeply connected to your concept of making amends. You don't just feel bad about past mistakes. You create a corrigendum, a correction. You look back at your life's text and you don't just cross out the errors. You try to write a better passage in the next chapter. Raising William, giving him every advantage of education and position, was your way of correcting that youthful error. It was an act of personal accountability that spanned decades. Your marriage to Deborah Reed is also central to this virtue. Your relationship with her was complex and has been interpreted in many different ways. It began with a youthful courtship, but you left for London, and she married another man in your absence. Her husband then abandoned her, leaving her in a legally precarious position. When you returned to Philadelphia, you and Deborah entered into a common law marriage in 1730 because her legal status prevented a formal church wedding. It was a practical solution to a messy situation. For you, this marriage was a cornerstone of stability. It was the foundation of an orderly household, which you saw as essential for your work. Deborah was an incredibly capable partner. She ran the household, managed the front part of the print shop, sold stationery, and even helped bind pamphlets. Her industry and frugality were legendary in their own right. Your marriage, in this sense, was a partnership that allowed both of you to prosper. It satisfied the conditions of your virtue. It was for health, both physical and emotional stability, and conducive to raising offspring, both William and the 2 children you would have with Deborah. It protected both your reputations and brought you peace. The nightly audit for a virtue like chastity would have been intensely personal. It was a quiet moment of self-reflection about your commitments and your conduct. Did your actions align with your stated values of stability and responsibility? Were you being a faithful and supportive partner to the woman who was so crucial to your success? A black dot in this row would represent a deepened personal failure, a betrayal not just of a rule in a book, but of the people you had committed your life to. Scholars often point out the great irony that later in your life, As a world-famous diplomat in Paris, you would become known as a great flirt, surrounded by the adoring women of the French salons. You were a master of witty, charming, and sometimes suggestive banter. How does this fit with the virtue of chastity? This is where your careful wording comes back into play. Your rule was against actions that caused injury to your and others' peace or reputation. In the sophisticated and libertine world of the Parisian elite, your flirtations were a social game, understood by all parties. They enhanced your reputation as a charming and worldly man. They did not injure it. You were, once again, adapting your virtue to the specific context, always with a pragmatic eye on the outcome. You have arrived at week 13, the final week of the course, and the last virtue is the one you added only after a friend's gentle but firm critique. Humility. The rule you set for yourself is simple and profound. Imitate Jesus and Socrates. This is, without a doubt, the most challenging and paradoxical virtue on your list. Your entire project is an act of monumental ambition. You are trying to achieve moral perfection, a goal so audacious it borders on arrogance. How do you pursue such a goal with genuine humility? This is the knot you must now try to untie. You realize quickly that actually feeling humble while being Benjamin Franklin, a man who knows he is smarter and more industrious than almost everyone he meets, is a tall order. Pride, you note, is the hardest passion to subdue, even if you manage to conquer it. You probably become proud of your humility, so you make a brilliantly pragmatic decision. If you cannot genuinely be humble, you will act humble. You will focus on the imitation part of the rule. To imitate Jesus, for you, is less about theology and more about a style of interaction. Gentle, non-judgmental, and focused on doing good. It's about practicing the golden rule, which you see as the foundation of all social harmony. To imitate Socrates is a more specific, tactical choice. Socrates was famous for professing his own ignorance. He didn't lecture. He asked questions. He drew knowledge out of others rather than imposing his own. This is the model you choose to adopt. You've already started this practice during your week on silence, but now you make it your primary mode of communication. You stop using words like certainly and undoubtedly. You stop directly contradicting people. You present your ideas as questions or suggestions. Instead of saying, "Your plan won't work," you say, "I wonder if we have considered this potential obstacle." This performance of humility is a masterstroke of social psychology. It makes you a more effective persuader. People are more receptive to an idea if they feel they were part of its discovery. By appearing to be a humble seeker of truth alongside them, you lower their defenses and guide them to your desired conclusion. Your Junta Club becomes the primary laboratory for this experiment. You transform it from a competitive debate club into a collaborative think tank, all by changing your personal style of interaction. There's a wonderful, almost comical, story you tell about this in your autobiography. You confess that you were so pleased with your newfound humility and the way it made your conversations run smoothly that you could barely resist pointing it out to your friends. The pride was still there, bubbling just beneath the surface, but you learned to keep it hidden. You found, you wrote, that you were less mortified when you were proven wrong, and you had an easier time persuading people to give up their mistakes when you gently pointed them out. Historians have a field day with this virtue. Is it genuine, or is it the most sophisticated form of manipulation? Did you truly want to be humble, or did you just want the social and political benefits that come from appearing humble? The academic world is still split. Some see it as a deeply cynical ploy. The final, perfecting touch on a carefully constructed public persona designed for maximum influence. They argue you didn't conquer your pride. You just weaponized it by cloaking it in the guise of humility. Others take a more generous view. They argue that the very act of imitating a virtue, of consistently practicing its outward forms, can have a transformative effect on the inner character. By acting humble for years, by constantly biting back your arrogant retorts and forcing yourself to listen, you might have, over time, actually become a more humble person. The performance, if sustained long enough, can become a reality. This is the fake it, till you make it school of moral philosophy. The nightly audit for humility is the most difficult of all. It requires a level of self-awareness that is almost impossible to achieve. You have to ask yourself, when I held my tongue today, was it an act of genuine Socratic inquiry? Or was I just silently congratulating myself on my cleverness? When I praised someone, was it a sincere appreciation or a strategic move? A black dot in the humility row is an admission that your pride got the better of you, that the mask slipped, either publicly or just in the private theater of your own mind. As you finish this 13th week, you have completed one full course. You have spent a week focusing on each of the pillars of your ideal character. You are not perfect. Your little book is sprinkled with black dots, the row for order looking particularly grim. But you are not discouraged. You simply turn back to the first page. Tomorrow, you will begin again with temperance. The project is never finished. Humility teaches you that the goal is not to arrive at a destination called perfection, but to stay on the path of constant, conscious improvement. Your personal project of moral perfection doesn't happen in a vacuum. It needs a testing ground, a community of peers who can provide both support and accountability. You realized early on that self-improvement is not a solo sport. So, in 1727, even before you finalized your 13 virtues, you created a secret society of sorts, a club you called the Jun Two. The Jun Two, also known as the Leather Apron Club, was your 18th century mastermind group. It was a collection of a dozen men, mostly artisans and tradesmen like yourself, a surveyor, a cabinetmaker, a glazier, a clerk. They were not from the wealthy elite of Philadelphia. They were ambitious, curious, and eager to improve their lot in life. You handpicked them for their intelligence, their open-mindedness, and their genuine desire for self-improvement. The meetings were held every Friday evening, discreetly, at a local tavern or in a member's rented room. The atmosphere was a unique blend of intellectual rigor and fraternal support. Each meeting followed a strict, efficient structure that you designed yourself. It began with a series of 24 standing queries that were read aloud, one by one. These questions were the operating system of the club, and they perfectly reflected the virtues you were privately cultivating. Some questions were about personal development. Hath any man you know fallen into vice or error this week? And in what manner can the John to assist him? This created a culture of mutual accountability. Members were expected to look out for each other, not just in business, but in character. Other questions were about business and networking. Hath any citizen you know lately failed in his business? And what have you heard of the cause? And hath any deserving stranger arrived in town since last meeting? And what have you heard or observed of his character or merits? This turned the Junto into a powerful information-sharing network, giving its members a significant competitive advantage. But the heart of the meeting was intellectual. Do you know of any fellow citizen who has lately done a worthy action, deserving praise and imitation? This question fostered a culture of positivity and civic-mindedness, and each week, a member was required to produce an essay on a topic of morals, politics, or natural philosophy, which would then be debated by the group. This is where your virtues of silence, humility, and moderation were put to the ultimate test. The goal wasn't to win the argument, but for the group to collectively arrive at a clear understanding of the truth. This little club was your laboratory. When you were struggling to master the art of conversation, you practiced on your Junto brothers. When you had a new idea for a civic improvement, like the lending library, you presented it to them first. They were your sounding board, your first investors, your board of directors for Project Philadelphia, the library company, the Union Fire Company, the University of Pennsylvania. Many of your most famous civic achievements were born in the humble meetings of the Junto. There's a fascinating and slightly clandestine aspect to the Junto that historians love. You kept its existence a secret for 30 years. You understood that its power lay in its intimacy and the trust among its members. You had a rule that if a member's business topic was being discussed, they had to leave the room so the others could speak freely. This commitment to honest, critical feedback was radical. The Junto was a safe space for dangerous ideas and honest self-appraisal. The relationship between your little black book and the Junto was profound. Your personal virtue project was the internal work, the development of the individual. The Junto was the external application, the place where that improved individual could test his skills and leverage them for the good of the group and the wider community. It was a perfect feedback loop. The discipline you learned from your book made you a better junta member, and the honest feedback and intellectual stimulation from the junta helped you refine your virtues. For example, it was almost certainly a Quaker member of the junta who pointed out your pride and prompted you to add humility to your list. The club acted as your mirror, showing you the parts of yourself you couldn't see. The academic debate surrounding the junta often centers on its purpose. Was it truly a club for mutual improvement in the noble, philosophical sense, or was it one of the most effective secret business and political networking machines ever created? The answer, as always with you, is a resounding both. You saw no conflict between self-interest and public good. By helping your fellow members succeed, you created a powerful network of allies who would, in turn, help you by debating ways to improve Philadelphia. You were creating a more prosperous and stable city for everyone to live and work in, including yourself. The junta was the embodiment of your belief that individual success and community well-being are inextricably linked. It was a testament to your genius for creating systems not just for your own life in a little book, but for the lives of others that were practical, efficient, and profoundly effective. It was where your private quest for perfection went public. While your 13 virtues provided the philosophical why, your daily timetable provided the practical how. This wasn't just a vague to-do list. It was a rigid, beautifully structured blueprint for a perfectly industrious day. It's so famous that modern productivity gurus still study it, marveling at its simple logic and ruthless efficiency. Let's break down the Franklin timetable and imagine what it felt like to actually live it. Diva. To 7. Rise, wash, and address powerful goodness, contrive day's business, and take the resolution of the day. Prosecute the present study. And breakfast. This is your secret to our morning block. The day begins not with frantic action, but with quiet intention. The address to powerful goodness and the question, what good shall I do this day, sits the moral compass. Contrive day's business is your planning session, where you map out your priorities. Take the resolution of the day is where you prime your willpower, committing to your goals. Then, and only then, do you prosecute the present study. This is the cornerstone of your self-improvement focused, uninterrupted learning while the city sleeps. Finally, a simple breakfast. By the time most people are starting their day, you have already prayed, planned, resolved, and studied. Eta. 2:11. 59. Work. There are no adjectives here, no qualifications, just work. This 4-hour block is for deep, focused labor in your print shop. You are not multitasking. You are not being distracted. You are sitting tight, operating the press, or managing your accounts. Your mind, already warmed up by your morning study, is sharp. The schedule protects this time. It tells you and everyone around you that from 8 to 12, you are unavailable for trifles. You are engaged in industry. 12 p. To 1 p. Read or overlook my accounts and dine. Your lunch break is not just for refueling your body, but also your mind. Notice that dying comes last. The primary purpose of this hour is to read or manage your finances. You might sit at your desk with your simple meal, the biscuit and raisins, while reviewing a ledger or reading a few pages of a book. This is a classic Franklin move, stacking productive habits. You're combining rest with light mental work, ensuring that no moment is truly wasted. It's the opposite of the long, boozy lunches your competitors are taking. To 5 p. Work. Another block of focused, industrious labor. This 3-hour stretch in the afternoon is often the hardest. The city is bustling. Energy can dip, and distractions are plentiful. But your schedule is a firm taskmaster. It calls you back to the press, back to your duties. Having had a light and temperate lunch helps you avoid the post-meal slump that plagues so many others. 6 p. To 9 p. Put things in their places. Supper, music or diversion, or conversation, examination of the day. This is your evening wind-down block, but it's still highly structured. It begins with put things in their places. This is your daily attempt to battle the chaos and practice the virtue of order. You tidy your shop and your desk, preparing for the next day. Then comes supper, followed by purposeful leisure, music or diversion. Or conversation is not passive entertainment. It's playing one of your instruments, which requires skill and focus. It's diversion with friends, which could be a game of chess, or it's conversation, likely with your Jun to club, debating meaningful topics. The final, crucial act of this block is the examination of the day. You pull out your little black book and ask the evening question. What good have I done today? You then conduct the audit, placing black dots next to the virtues you failed to uphold. This is your moment of accountability, the closing of the day's moral ledger. 10p. 2 4. Sleep. You allocate a generous 6 hours for sleep. This might seem short by modern standards, but in an era before electric light, people's sleep patterns were often different, sometimes broken into two phases. For you, sleep is not a luxury. It's a necessary function to prepare the machine for the next day's work. This timetable is a marvel of behavioral design. Historians and productivity experts point out several key features. It time blocks the entire day, assigning a specific purpose to every hour. It prioritizes focused deep work. It schedules planning and review. It even schedules studying up. However, there is a significant academic debate about how rigid leeway actually followed it. Was this an ideal to strive for, or a minute-by-minute reality? Your own writing suggests it was more of the former. You lamented your difficulty with order, which implies that the put things in their places block was often a struggle. Life is filled with interruptions, and as a busy printer, politician, and civic leader, your schedule was undoubtedly thrown into chaos on a regular basis. The value of the timetable, perhaps, was not in its perfect execution, but in its existence. It was a default to return to, a strong current pulling you back towards a productive and purposeful day whenever the inevitable storms of life tried to push you off course. It was the trellis upon which you grew your virtuous life. After weeks and months and then years of this relentless regimen, a profound and perhaps unexpected realization begins to dawn on you. You are failing, not in the eyes of the world, in fact. You are more successful than ever. Your business is thriving, your reputation is growing, and your influence in Philadelphia is unmatched. But by the perfect standards of your little book, you are consistently coming up short. The chart for order remains stubbornly speckled with black dots. Your desk is still a creative chaos. Your meticulously planned schedule is still vulnerable to the whims of customers and the delightful messiness of life. You still, on occasion, eat a little too much, speak when you should listen, or feel a flash of pride at a well-turned phrase. You are not a perfect man. You are not even close. There must have been a moment, a quiet evening during your examination of the day, when you looked at the spotted pages of your book and felt a wave of despair. The bold and arduous project of arriving at moral perfection seemed destined for failure. The gap between the man you were and the flawless ideal you had created seemed unbridgeable. This is the moment where many people would give up, tossing the book into the fire and declaring the whole experiment a fool's errand. But you do something far more interesting. You begin to embrace your own imperfection. You find a strange and wonderful comfort in your failures. In your autobiography, you reflect on this with incredible wisdom and humor. You write, "I was surprised to find myself so much fuller of faults than I had imagined, but I had the satisfaction of seeing them diminish." You recalibrate your definition of success. It's not about achieving a perfectly clean page. It's about seeing fewer dots this month than you did last month. Success is the trend line, not the final score. Then you make an even more profound discovery. You realize that being morally perfect might actually be a terrible idea. You write, "A perfect character might be attended with the inconvenience of being envied and hated, and that a benevolent man should allow a few faults in himself to keep his friends in countenance." This is one of the most brilliant, funny, and deeply human insights you ever record. It's a recognition that our flaws, our quirks, and our shared struggles are what connect us to other people. A perfect person would be intimidating. unrelatable, and frankly, annoying. Your messy desk, your occasional indulgence, your flashes of ego, these things make you human. They allow your friends and colleagues to feel comfortable around you, to see you not as a marble statue of virtue, but as a fellow traveler on the difficult road of life. This is the great, ironic punchline of your entire project. The quest for perfection leads you to a profound appreciation for imperfection. Historians and philosophers have chewed on this for centuries. Is this a genuine moment of enlightenment, a mature acceptance of human nature, or is it the ultimate rationalization, a clever way for a man who failed to meet his own impossible standards to declare victory anyway? It's a question that gets to the heart of what we mean by self-improvement. Is the goal to become a flawless machine, or is it to become a wiser, more compassionate, and more self-aware human being? You choose the latter. You don't abandon the project. You continue to carry the little book and mark your dots for the rest of your life. But your relationship with it changes. It ceases to be a harsh ledger of your sins and becomes more like a gentle, lifelong companion. It's a tool for metamorphosis, a daily reminder to live with intention, but not a stick to beat yourself with. This embrace of imperfection allows you to look at others with more grace. Having struggled so mightily with your own faults, you are less inclined to judge the faults of others. It enhances your practice of moderation and humility. You can see the good in people even when they fall short of an ideal, because you know intimately what it's like to fall short yourself. This journey from a rigid pursuit of perfection to a graceful acceptance of imperfection is perhaps the most valuable lesson you learn. It's a secret that many modern productivity hackers and self-help gurus often miss. They present a world of optimized schedules and flawless execution, which can leave people feeling inadequate when they inevitably fail. You, however, stumbled upon a deeper truth nearly 300 years ago. The goal is not to eliminate our faults, but to understand them, to manage them, and to find the humor and humanity within them. You set out to become a saint and discovered it was far more practical, and far more pleasant, to simply become a better man. Your project, which began as a private quest for self-mastery, inevitably begins to spill out from the pages of your little book and onto the very streets of your city. Your personal virtues become public works, having spent years trying to impose order on your desk and your schedule. You now look at the chaotic city of Philadelphia and see it as one giant, messy desk in need of tidying. You are no longer just a printer. By the 17, 30 seconds and 40 seconds, you are a respected civic leader, the clerk of the Pennsylvania Assembly, and the city as postmaster. These roles give you a platform, and you use it to apply the principles of your virtue system on a municipal scale. You become, in essence, Philadelphia's unofficial city manager, its chief problem solver. Take the virtue of order. You've struggled with it personally, but you see how a lack of it plagues the city. The streets are a disorderly mess, so you apply your methodical mind to the problem. You don't just complain, you organize. You launch the street paving and street lighting initiatives, bringing literal order out of the muddy, dark chaos. You are, in a very real sense, putting the city's things in their places. Then there's justice, with its command to not omit the benefits that are your duty. You see the lack of organized fire protection as a grave injustice, an omitted benefit, so you found the Union Fire Company. You see the lack of medical care for the poor and help spearhead the creation of the Pennsylvania Hospital. You see the need for higher education and become the driving force behind the academy that will become the University of Pennsylvania. Each of these institutions is a physical manifestation of your virtue of justice, a solution to a problem that you felt a duty to solve. Your virtue of industry is reflected in your approach to these projects. You don't just have the idea, you do the relentless, unglamorous work of making it happen. You write the proposals, you draft the legislation, you chair the committees, and you go door to door raising funds. The same focused energy you once applied to your printing press, you now apply to building a city. Even a virtue as personal as frugality finds a public expression when you are tasked with organizing a militia to defend the colony against potential attacks from the French and their Native American allies. You do it with remarkable efficiency. You organize a lottery to raise funds, a frugal and clever way to get public buy-in without imposing a direct tax. You are applying the principle of waste nothing to the complex business of public finance and defense. This transition from personal improvement to public works is a subject of great interest to historians. It marks your evolution from a successful businessman into a true statesman. Some scholars see this as a natural, almost inevitable progression. A man is organized, industrious, and ambitious as you could not be contained by a mere print shop. Your energies were too great. The city became your new project, a larger canvas on which to paint your vision of a rational, orderly, and prosperous society. A quirky, less-known example of this is your work as postmaster. When you took over the colonial postal system, it was slow, unreliable, and losing money. It was an offense against order and industry. You personally traveled thousands of miles, from New England to Virginia, surveying the routes, improving the efficiency of the riders, and rationalizing the accounting systems. You turned the postal service into a fast, reliable, and profitable organization. It was a classic Franklin move, taking a broken system, analyzing its faults, and redesigning it for maximum efficiency. It was like tidying a continent-sized desk. Of course, not everyone was thrilled with your growing influence. Your political opponents saw you as a master manipulator, a man who cloaked his ambition in the language of public service. They saw your network of civic organizations, the library, the fire company, the university, the philosophical society, not as gifts to the city, but as a political machine designed to consolidate your own power. And they weren't entirely wrong. You understood that influence was the currency of politics, and you were systematically making yourself the most influential man in Pennsylvania. But it's impossible to deny the results. Under your unofficial management, Philadelphia transformed. It became the cleanest, safest, most intellectually vibrant, and best-governed city in colonial America. It was a living testament to your philosophy. The city itself became the ultimate erratum corrected. You showed that the same principles a man could use to improve his own character could be used to improve the character of a community. The little book that began as a tool for perfecting one man's soul ended up building a city. For decades, your little book and its ambitious project remained your private secret, a personal operating system known only to you, and perhaps hinted it to your closest friends in the Jun too. It was the scaffolding upon which you built your life, but it was not meant for public display. That all changed when you were an old man, living in England as a celebrated diplomat and scientist. At the urging of friends, you decided to write your life story. This work, which would become one of the most famous autobiographies ever written, was the vehicle through which your secret project was finally revealed to the world. Sitting down to write, you are no longer the intense, 22-year-old printer obsessed with perfection. You are a world-famous figure, looking back on a long and remarkably successful life. Your perspective has softened. You can now see your youthful project with a mixture of fondness, amusement, and gentle wisdom. You dedicate a significant portion of the first part of your autobiography to meticulously detailing the bold and arduous project. You lay it all out: the reasoning, the list of 13 virtues, the creation of the little book, the weekly cycle, the daily schedule, and your struggles with virtues like order. You are, in effect, open-sourcing your personal code for self-improvement. Why did you do this? Your stated reason is for the benefit of your son, William, to whom the first part of the book is addressed. You present it as a roadmap, a set of instructions on how a person of humble origins can achieve both wealth and virtue. But historians believe your audience was much broader. You knew this book would likely be published. You were consciously crafting your own legacy, defining for future generations how you wish to be remembered, not just as a statesman or an inventor, but as a philosopher of practical, everyday life. The act of writing about the project transforms it. The little book, with its private, ink-stained pages, was a tool for doing. The autobiography is an act of teaching. You are no longer just living the experiment. You are explaining its methodology, its results, and its conclusions. And your main conclusion, as you present it, is that while you never achieved the perfection you sought, the attempt to do so made you a better and happier man. This is the key lesson you want to pass on. The publication of your autobiography had a profound and lasting impact. You're a little ambitious that could went viral. 18th century style. The book was translated into dozens of languages and became a bestseller across Europe and America. It turned your personal productivity system into a global phenomenon. Suddenly, people from all walks of life were reading about your 13 virtues and your daily schedule. They were inspired to create their own little books, to start their own projects of self-betterment. This is the moment where Benjamin Franklin, the man, becomes Benjamin Franklin, the archetype, the patron saint of self-help. Your story provided a powerful new narrative for success. It suggested that success was not simply a matter of birth, luck, or divine favor. It was a matter of system, discipline, and hard work. It was a democratic ideal. Anyone, no matter how humble their beginnings, could improve their station in life by improving their character. Of course, this has led to a long and complex debate that continues to this day. Did you, by popularizing this methodical approach to self-improvement, inadvertently create a culture of relentless, anxiety-inducing productivity? Some critics argue that the modern obsession with life hacking, with optimizing every second of the day, with turning the self into a project to be managed, can be traced directly back to your little book. They see poor Richard not as a wise, gentle guide, but as a tyrannical taskmaster who whispers in our ear that we should always be doing something more useful. Other scholars argue that this is a misreading of your ultimate message. They point to your humor, your humility about your own failures, especially with order, and your final conclusion that a speckled axe is best. They argue that your true lesson was not about achieving robotic perfection, but about the value of mindful, intentional living, combined with a healthy dose of self-compassion, regardless of which side of the debate one falls on. The impact is undeniable. By choosing to include the story of your little book in your autobiography, you ensured that your intensely personal experiment would have a public life that long outlasted your own. You gave the world a blueprint, the how-to guide for a life of purpose. The little book that you stitched together as a young man in a dusty print shop became one of the most influential texts in the history of personal development, its pages still being read and debated nearly 300 years later. While you were busy, inside your own head, meticulously tracking your virtues and scheduling your days, the people around you were forming their own opinions of this strange and intense young man. What did it feel like to be friends with, married to, or in business with a budding self-improvement guru? Your project didn't exist in a bubble, and the reactions of others are fascinating and often funny. Part of the story. Let's start with your wife, Deirdre. She was your partner in every sense of the word, a woman of immense practical skill and fortitude. She ran the front of the shop, managed the household accounts with a frugality that likely rivaled your own, and raised your children. How did she view your little book and its strict rules? The historical record, frustratingly, is mostly silent from her perspective, as few of her letters survive, but we can imagine. She would have seen the benefits of your industry and frugality firsthand. They built the comfortable life you shared, but she must have also found your rigidity amusing, or perhaps occasionally maddening. Imagine trying to run a household with a man who has scheduled a specific time to put things in their places. One can almost picture her rolling her eyes as you meticulously arrange your desk while the more pressing domestic matter needs attention. Or perhaps she saw your evening examination of the day as a peculiar but harmless hobby. Like a man who collects stamps, she was the practical anchor to your philosophical kite, the one who managed the messy reality of life while you were busy trying to fit it in neat little boxes. Then there were your friends in the Junta Club. They were your fellow travelers in self-improvement, but even they must have regarded your personal system with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. It was probably your old friend, the Quaker who inspired the virtue of humility, who provides the best insight, his feedback that you were proud, opinionated, and often came on to strong gives us a glimpse of the unperfected you. Your friends saw your flaws. They witnessed your struggle to practice silence, to bite back a clever but cutting remark. They probably teased you about your dietary experiments or your obsessive scheduling. However, they also reaped the rewards of your project. They more humble, more moderate, or just Franklin was a better friend and a more effective leader for their club. They saw you transform, Over years, from a brilliant but abrasive young man into a wise and diplomatic leader, they were the first-hand witnesses to your experiment, and their continued loyalty and support suggest that, on balance, they approved of the results, even if they found the methods a bit eccentric. Your business associates and competitors are another story. They likely didn't know about the little book, but they certainly saw its effects. They saw a printer who worked longer hours, managed his finances more carefully, and built a reputation for unshakable reliability. To them, you must have seemed like a machine, a man of almost unnerving discipline. Your competitor, Samuel K. Eimer, whom you eventually bought out, probably saw you as a ruthless operator. Your success, driven by your virtues, directly lead to his failure. This is a key point that historians often raise. Your virtue project was also a competitive weapon. Your frugality allowed you to live cheaply and reinvest in your business. Your industry allowed you to outproduce your rivals. Your sincerity and justice built a base of customer trust that others couldn't match. From the outside, stripped of its philosophical language, your quest for moral perfection looked a lot like a brilliant, long-term business strategy. It's easy to admire a man's virtues when you're his friend. It's much harder when you're his competitor and his industry is putting you out of business. Finally, we can only guess at what your son, William, thought. He was raised within this system, a living part of the household governed by Poor Richard's maxims. He saw his father's relentless drive up close. Did he see it as an inspiring model to emulate, or as an impossible standard to live up to? The later rift between you and William remained loyal to the British Crown during the Revolution. A move you saw as the ultimate betrayal suggests a complex and strained relationship. Perhaps William, in his own way, grew tired of living in the shadow of a father who was not just a father, but a living monument to self-perfection. It's a poignant reminder that even the most well-intentioned personal project can have unintended and complicated consequences for those we love. Through these different eyes, we see a more complete picture of your experiment. It was not just a private dialogue between you and your book. It was a public performance with a real-world audience. A performance that was, by turns, inspiring, effective, intimidating, and perhaps, for those closest to you, deeply challenging. The years fly by. The print shop, the junta club, the bustling streets of colonial Philadelphia, they all recede into the past. You are no longer a young man striving, but an old man who has arrived. The year is now sometime in the late 1770s or early 1780s. You are in Paris, the glittering center of the Western world. You are not just a visitor. You are the American ambassador to France, the most famous and beloved American on the planet. You sit in a plush chair in a Parisian salon. The room is a symphony of gold leaf, velvet, and candlelight. The air hums with witty conversation, the clinking of wine glasses, and the scent of perfume. You are surrounded by philosophers, duchesses, scientists, and statesmen. They hang on your every word. To them, you are the embodiment of the new world, wise, natural, and refreshingly direct. They call you Bonham Richard Goodman Richard, a nod to the wise character from your old almanac. Your simple fur cap, which you wear in place of a powdered wig, has become a fashion statement. In this moment of ultimate triumph, what do you think of that young man back in Philadelphia? The one with the ink-stained fingers and the little black book. You look back on his bold and arduous project, not with the intense, day-to-day focus of a practitioner, but with the long, serene view of a historian looking at his own life. You see the profound irony of your situation. Here you are, in the most luxurious and indulgent city in the world, a place that is the very antithesis of your early virtues of temperance and frugality. You attend lavish dinners, navigate complex social rituals that are anything but sincere, and engage in a level of high-stakes diplomacy that makes your old jung to debate seem like child's play. Have you abandoned your project, or have you transcended it? You would likely argue the latter. The virtues were a training regimen, a form of mental and moral conditioning. They were the scaffolding you used to build the edifice of your character. Now, in your old age, the scaffolding has been removed, but the building stands strong. You no longer need to consciously check a box for silence. Decades of practice have made thoughtful speech an ingrained habit. You no longer need a rule for justice. A lifetime of civic action has made it your natural inclination. You can now afford to be more flexible. You can enjoy a fine French wine without fear of it leading to dullness, because your self-control is no longer a fragile thing to be fiercely guarded. You can engage in the elaborate flattery of the French court because your core of sincerity is solid. You know who you are and what you believe, so the superficial gains don't threaten your integrity. Historians often debate this Parisian phase of your life. Some see it as a betrayal of your earlier, more austere values. They point to your flirtatious relationships with the women of the salons and your enjoyment of luxury as proof that you went native. They argue that the simple, leather-aproned tradesman got seduced by the glamour of the old world. But another, more compelling argument is that your time in Paris was the ultimate test of your virtues. It's easy to be frugal when you have no money. It's easy to be industrious when you have a business to build. But can you hold on to your core values when you are surrounded by fame, wealth, and temptation? Your ability to navigate the treacherous waters of the French court, to secure the crucial alliance that would win the American Revolution, was the ultimate proof of your mastery. It required all 13 of your virtues working in concert: the temperance to keep a clear head, the silence to listen for secrets, the resolution to pursue your goal relentlessly, the humility to charm and persuade, and the justice to serve your country's cause. As you look back from the comfort of your Parisian salon, you see the full arc of the project. It was never truly about achieving a perfect, static state of moral perfection. It was a dynamic process of becoming. It was a system for growth. The little book was not a destination. It was a compass. It pointed you in a direction, and you walked that path for a lifetime. You smile a little, a private, knowing smile that the Duchess across the room mistakes for a charming flirtation. You think of that spotted line for order in your book. You never did conquer that messy desk. And you know, with the deep, calm wisdom of old age, that this is perfectly fine. The speckled X, you remember, was always the best one. After all, the long race you ran was not against an ideal of perfection, but against your own former self. And from this vantage point, looking back across an ocean and a lifetime, you can see with perfect clarity that you have, without a doubt, won. The project that began in the flickering candlelight of a young man's ambition is now a historical artifact. Your life is over, but the ideas you set down in your little book and later in your autobiography have taken on a life of their own. They have outlived you, outlived your century, and continue to echo in the minds of people searching for a better way to live. Your personal self-improvement plan has become a timeless and surprisingly modern guide. Why does this nearly 300-year-old system still resonate? Why are modern productivity bloggers and self-help authors still, in many ways, just writing footnotes to your work? The answer lies in the elegant and universal principles you identified. First, there's the power of intention. You didn't just stumble through life. You started each day by asking, what good shall I do? And ended it by asking, what good have I done? This simple act of framing your day with purpose is a cornerstone of modern mindfulness and productivity. It's the idea that a life lived deliberately is more meaningful and effective than a life lived on autopilot. Second is the principle of incremental progress. You understood that you couldn't fix everything at once. Your 13-week cycle, focusing on one virtue at a time, is a brilliant system for avoiding overwhelm. It's the 18th century version of atomic habits, the idea that small, consistent changes compound over time to produce remarkable results. You knew that the path to a better life wasn't a giant leap, but a series of small, steady steps. Third, you championed the act of tracking and review. Your little black book with its grid and its dots was, in essence, a habit tracker. The daily examination was a form of journaling and self-assessment. You understood that you can't improve what you don't measure. This data-driven approach to personal growth feels incredibly contemporary. You were applying the scientific method to your own soul, gathering data, the black dots, analyzing it, and adjusting your behavior accordingly. Fourth, you saw the link between the private and the public. Your project didn't end with your own moral purity. It flowed outward into your community. You demonstrated that self-improvement is not a selfish act. Being more industrious, Just and orderly person is also a better citizen, a better neighbor, and a more effective agent for positive change in the world. This is a powerful counterargument to the idea that self-help is inherently narcissistic. Your system is not without its critics, and the ongoing debate is part of its living legacy. Some argue that your intense focus on utility and efficiency devalues the parts of life that are not useful: play, spontaneity, and pure, unproductive joy. Is there room in the Franklin timetable for simply sitting and watching a sunset without trying to get something out of it? It's a valid question. The system's greatest strength, its relentless pragmatism, can also be seen as its greatest weakness. Historians are still untangling the man from the myth you so carefully constructed. How much of your public persona was a true reflection of your inner life? And how much was a performance for the sake of reputation and influence? Was the speckled axe story a genuine moment of self-acceptance, or a clever way to reframe your own failure? The fact that we are still asking these questions is a testament to your complexity. You weren't a simple character. You were as layered and full of contradictions as the nation you helped to found. But in the end, the enduring power of your guide is its fundamental optimism. Your project was built on the radical belief that improvement is possible. You believed that a person is not a fixed entity, but a work in progress. You believed that through reason, discipline, and consistent effort, we can correct our own errata and write a better story for ourselves. From the quiet of a colonial print shop to the bustling digital world of the 21st century, the call of that project remains. It's a whisper that challenges us to live with more intention, to be a little more disciplined, a little more useful, and a little more forgiving of our own inevitable imperfections. Your little book, in the end, wasn't just a guide for becoming Benjamin Franklin. It was, and still is, a guide for becoming a better version of ourselves. The story of the little book is now coming to a close. The ink is dry, the pages filled. The ambitious young man has become a wise old soul, and his private experiment has become a public legacy, a quiet hum beneath the noise of the centuries. The project is complete, yet it is never truly finished. It rests now, waiting, in the quiet spaces of your own mind. The lights of the Parisian salon have long since dimmed. The clatter of the Philadelphia cobblestones has faded into silence. All that is left is the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, a soft and steady beat in the stillness of the night. You can feel the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders, your thoughts slowing down, drifting like soft clouds across a twilight sky. The need to strive, to schedule, to improve, it all dissolves into a peaceful calm. There are no more dots to mark, no more ledgers to examine. There is only this moment, this comfortable darkness, this gentle journey into rest. The speckled axe is, after all, the most beautiful. It is perfectly imperfect, just like a day well lived, now settling into the soft embrace of a night well earned. Let the current of sleep carry you now, gently downstream, into the quiet harbor of your dreams. The end of the article. Good night.